Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Heroes
We've been
of
waiting
the
17
Storm.
years for
And
this.
today, we're going to be taking a look at one of the newest characters, the Lost Vikings. The Lost Vikings comes from, of course, the game of the same name, the Lost Vikings. And so in that game, for those who are not familiar with the series or the characters, it was a 2D action game in which you controlled three separate characters one at a time, use their various skills in order to solve puzzles. And in that vein, the Lost Vikings do the exact same thing in Heroes of the Storm. The Lost Vikings are one hero, but they are controlled as three separate individual characters. So I'll go ahead and take a look very quickly at the skins. This is the base skin, different colors. We're going to green. And then we'll look at the master skin. Now the master skin,
Do you guys ever feel like we're being watched?
it's kind of nice because the master skin is actually a reference to Lost Vikings 2, which this kind of all came from. It's pretty nice. It's interesting to see a master skin that is actually based in the franchise. And this is the current skin that you can purchase, the Pajama Party, Lost Vikings. He's got a little banana peel in his shield. Alright, we're going to go ahead and take the Vikings in and we'll show you all about them. Alright, so here we are in game with the Lost Vikings, and probably one of the first things you might notice is that they have no skills. There are no abilities that you can use with these characters unless you get them through talents. Now, to be honest, this character or set of characters feels like it's actually not very powerful without the abilities. The idea is great. I like that they're experimenting with it, but it really feels like you need some of the abilities to really make them work. But there are some interesting ideas going into this that you might be able to utilize if you're really good at micromanagement. Not something I'm overly great at, so my opinion may be slightly biased. So looking at the characters, well, first we'll give you a little dance, which I think is great. They're pretty much synchronized except for Eric. Alright, so you control three characters individually. You'll notice that I have the 1 through 4 already set up here. You have 1, which selects Olaf, the Stout. He can charge enemies by right-clicking on them. It's on an 8-second cooldown. So he does have an ability, you just don't have the ability to, it's not a button press. It happens automatically. He also gains increased health regeneration when out of combat for 4 seconds. So we'll go ahead and show off Olaf. You do select them individually. 1, 2, and 3 will select Olaf, Balog, and Eric the Swift individually. 4 will select your entire Lost Viking group to allow you to move them all at once. They don't have a mount mechanic. You can hit Z and they move really fast. Let's go ahead and look at Olaf. I'll show him off. You can see he does have a bit more hit points than the others. He's got 2.5 bars roughly, whereas Balog has 2, Eric has maybe 1.5. So you have to keep that in mind. Each Viking does have his own individual health bar. They also have their individual spawn rates. So Olaf has died. He'll come back individually. I guess this is a good time to take a look at their trait while we're waiting for him to come back. The death timer for the Lost Vikings is reduced by 25%, so they do come back faster than any other hero. And since you've got 3 of them, if you only lose 1, you're still in the game. I'd also like to point out that your deaths only count as a quarter of a death of a hero. So there's 3 Vikings, which means even if they kill all 3 of you, they haven't quite gained the experience for a full hero. So the deaths count as a quarter. That means the experience gained by the enemy is also a quarter. So let's show off the charge. If I right-click, you'll see he'll dive in and do damage. And then if I give him out of combat, a lot like Muradin, he will eventually start to regenerate. The difference is, unlike Muradin, he doesn't have a health threshold he has to meet. Muradin comes up at about 50%, whereas Olaf here will go all the way up to his full hit points when he's allowed to sit and regenerate. Probably mostly due to his reduced health pool size. All right, I'm going to go ahead and toggle the minions so we can take a look at Balog. Balog is a ranged character, whereas Olaf is melee. He's the only melee of the 3 Vikings. Balog does 50% splash damage to all enemies behind his current attack target. So I'll go ahead and pick a target, and you can see the sword hits the target, and then you'll see kind of a conal splash damage from everything behind it. And so that's his special ability. Moving on to Eric the Swift. Now, Eric is the fastest of the Vikings. They do have a speed difference. If I move them all as one, you'll notice that. Eric moves much faster than the other two. The other two, Balog is still a little bit faster than Olaf. So that is also something to keep in mind because you can end up having a single Viking out in dealing with threats by himself without his backup. Now, Eric, really all he has is a faster movement and longer attack range. So I can kind of move in here. You can see he's got a pretty decent attack range. If we bring him in with Balog, you can see a little bit of the difference. Matter of fact, let me go ahead and toggle the minions so we don't have to worry about that. We'll move Olog out of the way. Olaf. And what we'll do is we'll both hit the same target, and you'll see there's Eric is back here, and Balog is here. So there is a discrepancy between their reaches. And that's their quote-unquote abilities. You have a charge, an AoE splash, and then longer range with some speed. And since you can control them individually with the... You can do this one of two ways. You can control them individually with the 1, 2, and 3. 4, of course, selects the entire group. Or you can click, just like in an RTS. I can click on one of them and move it. I can click and drag, control more than one at a time if I wish. So really, you can kind of move them around however you want. You can have 2 of the Vikings holding a place. You can maybe have Eric run out, maybe grab a point or an objective or something while the other 2 are fighting. But it's going to be up to you to kind of keep an eye on them, because you have to make sure you're maintaining orders. And if you put 2 of these guys on an attack move and then move the other out, they will continue to move in and attack. Which means if an enemy tries to run away, they will chase that enemy into towers and die for it. So you have to be very careful.
Where do you get these ideas?
At level 10, the Vikings gain 2 ultimate abilities or heroic abilities, just like any other character. The first one we'll be looking at is Play Again! You summon and revive all lost Vikings at a target location after a Viking channels for 2 seconds. Only one Viking may attempt to summon at a time. So this is... It's a summon ability, but it's also a revival ability. So let's take him out and have these 2 go in and die. So we've lost one. I'm going to go ahead and send him back. Actually, I'll go ahead and have him die because Eric is actually revived. So he'll die, and then I will revive him. Just like that. So it's a great ultimate if you're getting ready to assault a position. Maybe you've lost your Vikings, or maybe you have your Vikings separated on the field. It's a great way to get all of them back really quickly. At level 20, you can modify Play Again to have checkpoint reached. Any dead Vikings are revived and summoned a second time 10 seconds later. So what we're going to do is we're going to reset the cooldown. We're going to go ahead and try and use it. We're going to send Eric in to hopefully die. Alright, so he's been summoned. Now I've got 10 seconds to kill him. There we go. Now he's dead. And now he's back. So by using that, you have 10 seconds that you can go out and die and still get revived quickly. But they will be revived where you put the stone summoning thing, whatever you want to call it. So keep in mind that if the enemy sees it, they might wait for you to come back there. So anyone that dies will go back there. You have 10 seconds to do it. Now, you don't stop the enemy from getting experience from your deaths, so that's also something else to keep in mind. But if you like that summon, or that ultimate, then this can be a very nice modifier for it. Your other ultimate at level 10 is the Longboat Raid. 90-second cooldown. You hop into an unstoppable longboat that fires at nearby enemies for, at this point, level 20, 350 damage per second, and can fire a mortar that deals 450 damage in an area. The boat has increased health for each Viking inside, so you can only really summon it when you have your Vikings nearby. If I get these guys just out of range, You can see I cannot summon it anymore. You have to be within a specific range. Now keep in mind that the Longboat keeps the same amount of damage no matter how many Vikings are inside of it. So if you are down to one Viking, you can still use the Longboat and it will still be very powerful. The downside is that the more Vikings that are dead, the less health it has. It does count as a secondary life bar, kind of like the old version of Tychus's Odin, which has since been changed. So there may be a small chance this will happen here too, but with the Vikings being slightly weaker than Tychus, it may not happen. We're going to go ahead and pop the Longboat. And you can see they'll roll around, and you have full control over it. You have no control over what targets they attack. They usually will attack the closest target to you, and you can see it hits pretty hard per second. Now what you do have is this Q ability of a mortar, which has a fairly decent range that you can fire off independently. And this has a 3-second cooldown. You can see that also hits pretty hard. The damage on this ultimate is not to be underestimated. If you're fighting the Vikings, it can hurt. About the only thing you really can do is get it to confuse its damage. Since the Vikings have no control over where the main damage is being dealt, they only have control over the mortar. But do keep in mind that they can use the mortar to try and chase down running targets by leading the target. The automatic damage is unavoidable as far as I can tell. At level 20, you can modify it to Ragnarok and Roll. The Longboat can now attack 2 targets at once, and the range of the mortar is increased by 100%. So we'll go ahead and pop the Longboat, and you can see when I hit Q, I can fire all the way up to here from where I am. So it's pretty much a full distance away. So you can hit an enemy base at long range should you need to. Although the power of the Longboat is, of course, with its ability to auto-target and do a lot of damage. So we'll go ahead and pop it here, and you'll see there it goes. It's firing 2 mortars now independently to the 2 towers and doing quite a bit of damage. This is very useful for assaulting forts and for killing heroes. Again, its damage is not to be underestimated.
I'm Eric. Too fast, too furious.
Alright, we're going to take a look at the talents for the Vikings. This is going to be kind of interesting compared to other heroes, because once again, you don't have abilities, so no abilities get modified, but you do have some quirks upon the gameplay that you can put into play. So at level 1, you've got 3 choices, one for Olaf, one for Eric, and one for the entire Viking horde. So that's what makes it interesting. Your talents will very rarely affect all of the Vikings at once, but each one will have some kind of change in gameplay. So, picking at the first one, let's look at the Viking Horde. This one allows each lost Viking to gain 1 health per second as additional regeneration. And the bonus is increased by 0.5 on all Vikings when a regeneration globe is picked up. Now, this is stacking and this is permanent. This is basically an upgraded version of Regeneration Master, where you would gain a certain amount of regeneration, and then after about 4 or 6 health globes or something like that, you would start getting additional regeneration over time. This happens immediately, and I've already kind of picked up a few stacks to show it off. You can see I have a bonus regen of 2.5, so as of right now I'm sitting at 3.23. I'm going to toggle the minions and pick up a health globe, and you should see it should go to 3.7.
Right away.
So go ahead and kill the mage in order to get it. So I hit it, there we go. 4.36. Okay, went a little bit higher than I thought. But there you go. You can see the bonus regen is now 3. So it continues to stack. It works for all the Vikings. This is very useful. If you're very good about picking up globes, then that can help you to stay alive. Your other options at level 1 are Olaf the Stout, where every 8 seconds Olaf can block a basic attack, reducing its damage by 75% and store up to 2 charges. So this is basically block. But it's a more powerful version of block because it's 75% damage instead of 50. But it's only on one of your Vikings. It's only on Olaf.
What now?
Your other option is Spy Games. Eric will cloak and increase his vision if he is stationary. So he has to hold still for 5 seconds. He becomes cloaked. His sight radius is increased by 75%, and the cloak effect will persist for 3 seconds after moving. So you can see I've picked it up. Let's go ahead and move the guys around. We'll go ahead and put Eric kind of in the middle.
Where am I going? Oh, never
But just like any other cloak, he will have, of course, of shimmer. But really what you're doing here in buying this is you're kind of making Eric a ward. You're putting him out there and you're trying to watch out for enemy movement. So that can be quite useful if you're deciding to play the Vikings individually. You have to be very careful because you've just sent one of your only ranged characters out, and Eric is the weakest of the 3 Vikings. He does not have very much health at all. He doesn't hit very hard. Really all he has going for him is his speed and his range. But that could be the good thing, because if he does get detected, he gets found out, he can possibly run away. At level 4, we have modifications for Balog, 2 more for Eric and 1 for the Vikings as a whole. Balog can get the Pain Don't Hurt ability. Balog's basic attacks and splash damage will heal him for 20% of the damage dealt. That can be quite useful because it does include the splash damage. He does 50% of his damage to anything else it splashes onto, and it can splash onto a pretty good group. If you're hitting, say, the mage, it can hit all 3 archers. So that can give him a really good amount of healing, especially since it's 20% of the damage he's doing. Alternatively, you can modify Eric. Further, Eric's attack will destroy structure ammo. His basic attacks will destroy 5 ammo over 10 seconds. So it's kind of a bleed effect for ammo. You hit the tower, and then over 10 seconds it loses 5 ammo. So if you're really trying to push on a lane, you might want to pick that up for Eric. Alternatively, you can get Hard-Headed Redhead. Eric gains a melee basic attack that knocks the enemy away. It has a 6-second cooldown. Now again, you'll notice it's not an ability. It's not something that I can actually activate. It's something you have to use on your own. And you have to typically have... I don't want him to attack. Stop attacking. Okay, apparently he's going to auto-attack. I can't stop him from auto-attacking. So what he's going to do is he'll have a basic attack that knocks the enemy away. It can't be his ranged attack. It is a melee. So if I come over here and I right-click on Arthas, you'll notice he's just going to start attacking him. No matter what I do, he's just going to attack him with his slingshot. But if I get him on top of him, you can see I hit him with a melee attack, and it knocks him out of position. So this seems like a really great ability, right? And it can be if you're really good at wanting, or if you need to move enemies around. It's almost kind of like having, say, Stitches or, I forget, Muradin, who can push back. It's really nice, and it is on a 6-second cooldown, so it's relatively short. The downside, though, of course, is you have to very specifically have Eric on top of the enemy, which can be difficult unless you're really good at micromanaging, because you'll have to make sure you get him there, because any just right-clicking the enemy will have him use his auto-attack, and Eric has the longest attack range of the 3. So that makes it... Again, the Vikings are one of these characters that are going to have this very... to me, seems like a very high skill ceiling if you want to operate them independently, just because you have to know where everything is. Now, if you're really good at RTS games, these guys are probably going to be your cup of tea. For me, I've never really been great at those. I prefer to operate the Vikings as a unit. You have to keep in mind the Vikings as a unit are still a little bit weak, but they are better together than the separate, because when they're separate, they definitely die very quickly. The last ability here at level 4 is Spin to Win. This affects all the Vikings. This gives you your very first ability. It's a 12-second cooldown. You'll notice the Vikings have no mana. You activate this to have each Viking Whirlwind, and it does 90 damage at this level. The damage scales up pretty nicely. I'll go ahead and move in, and you can kind of see they all spin. Now, from the description, you would think that if you overlapped the Vikings, all 3 of them would do damage. So if I could get maybe 2 Vikings to hit, it might be 180 damage. But it doesn't seem to be that way. It seems to be that any enemy hit by Spin to Win can only be hit by the damage source once. So if we go up to Arthas, it appears that it only applies once, although you can see that it does do quite a bit of damage. Fortunately, you can't look at the individual hit points of the Vikings. There is no way to do that here. But let's just take a look here. If I take, say, an individual Viking and go up and hit him, compared to all 3, it looks to be roughly the same. So go up. 1 hit. Clear cooldowns. Just show it off again. 1 hit. Yeah, if it does overlap, then it doesn't do nearly as much damage. One thing I would like to show off, since we have a little bit of damage here, and this is something I probably should have showed off in the beginning, you can have 1 Viking go to use a fountain, and it affects all 3 Vikings. which can be very useful because you can send Eric out to get health while the other two are fighting.
I'll take the lead.
At level 7, we have modifiers for Balog, Eric, and 2 modifiers for the entire group. First, we have Balog the Fierce. Balog's basic attack increases his attack speed by 8%, stacks up to 5 times. After 3 seconds of not attacking, these stacks will rapidly decay. I just want to show this one off, actually. Even though it's pretty basic, I don't tend to to show off a lot of the basic ones. But this is actually a pretty good attack speed increase for him. You'll kind of see it stacking up, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now he's throwing out really quickly there. You combine that with his healing on that ability, and he can sustain in a lane pretty well. You can probably make Balog a solo fighter for a lane pretty easily when you're doing that. The other option is to get Eric the Swift. As long as Eric is moving, he will heal 36 health per second. Let's just go ahead and reset and show that one off. This is one of the few abilities the Vikings can have to kind of heal themselves. Olaf heals himself over time. He gets that from the very beginning. Balog can heal himself with his damage. Eric heals himself by taking damage. So as you can see here, I'm constantly moving, and he's constantly getting healing. But it's nowhere near as much healing as, say, Olaf's regeneration. But it is nice to know that I can kind of keep him moving. It's more of a way, I think, to keep him alive. If Eric gets caught and you want to run away, it'll start give you healing as you're running away from the enemy. And since he's already moving pretty fast, it should prevent him from dying, but it's definitely not one of the ones I would really pick for this level. I would probably pick more of Balog the Fierce or the ability to jump for the Vikings. The other option at this level is Mercenary Lord. We've seen this one on other characters. Siege and Bruiser minions near you will deal 50% damage. Now, previously, if you've watched other videos, Mercenary Lord, I used to say when you captured a point, it makes that mercenary more powerful based on what type it is. That used to be the case. This is a recently modified ability, so now you have to be in the lane with the mercenaries. You don't have to capture the mercenaries, so that's good. So what that means for the Vikings, though, is that Mercenary Lord can be used to split push lanes with mercenary pushes. If you get mercenaries in different lanes, say 2 to 3 lanes, you can split your Vikings up into those lanes and give the Mercenary Lord capabilities to the minions in each of those lanes. So this can be very useful for a split push. It's one of those that's very difficult to decide on. Which would be better if you're going for a split version of the Vikings, like if you're going to split your Vikings up a lot, whether I would go for Balog the Fierce because of the attack speed or Mercenary Lord. It would really depend on if the team is really good about pushing with mercenaries, because this can be very powerful. Normally you only have one lane being pushed with Mercenary Lord, if at all, because a lot of people will put mercenaries in a lane and not stay with them. But this can really turn a tide in a push. The last ability at level 7 is Jump, a 20-second cooldown. It makes all the Vikings invulnerable and able to pass over enemies for 1.5 seconds. It does literally what it says on the 10. You jump up and you're invulnerable for a little while. Now, you can jump over enemies. I'll go ahead and show it off. Boom, there we jump. And I have full control over their movement. Now, while as I can jump over enemies, I cannot jump over obstacles. So I'll just kind of show that off. If the enemy pulls me behind their base, I can't get away. So you have to keep that in mind. Jump will allow you to go over enemy minions. You can't be body blocked when you have jump, as long as it's not on cooldown. But you're not going to be able to get past forts or anything like that. This is a beautiful ability, though, for getting getting invulnerability for 1.5 seconds. If you're about to get hit with a big hit, maybe Nova has put Precision Strike on top of you. That's the thing about these Vikings. You're very vulnerable to AoE because you're 3 separate entities. If someone hits you with an AoE, you're going to take more damage than anyone else. Alternatively, if you take single target damage, you're kind of not as worried as much, because if you lose one Viking, they come back fairly quickly and you still have the other 2 Vikings. Because you're worried about AoE damage, something like triple tap probably won't hurt you too much. Triple tap will kill 1 Viking. Okay, you can keep going. Precision Strike would have an AoE that can hit all 3 of your Vikings, possibly killing them all. Having jump means you're not going to take damage from it. At level 13, you have 2 group abilities and 1 ability for Olaf. Olaf gets Hunk of Burning Olaf. Olaf will deal 54 damage every second to nearby enemies. So it's basically a burning aura that you would see on any other character, but once again, it only occurs on Olaf. He's kind of the tank of your group. It allows you to do a bunch of additional damage. That can be very useful when you're operating your Vikings as a group or even as, by themselves, because if Olaf's by himself, it gives him a little bit of extra damage to do to a lane. You can get speed run. While under 50% life, your Vikings will gain 20% increased movement speed. So that's very useful for keeping Vikings alive that are getting very low. Lastly, you have Impatience as a Virtue. This is probably the one I would pick if you're going to go with, say, the abilities like Spin to Win or Jump. Simply because this allows you to... Any enemy that's damaged by your Viking allows you to reduce your cooldown. It reduces the cooldown of all Viking abilities by a quarter of a second. If all 3 Vikings are hit, that's by 75.75 seconds, so almost a full second. And since some of the Vikings, especially if you get attack speed on Balog here, you can get that down very quickly. Unfortunately, though, the attack speed on Balog is on the same category as Jump, so you might not be using abilities with that. But even so, getting the Vikings in there, doing damage, and it's just going to guarantee that you get your cooldowns reduced. And so you can actually do these a lot more than it says here. So it says 12 seconds, this says 20 seconds. You can do those quite a bit often. This is very important, I believe, especially when you get into level 16.
Choose a talent.
Because at level 16, you can get the final ability for your Vikings, and that's Norse Force, which has a 60-second cooldown. It's one of the longest cooldowns, probably the longest cooldown for a basic ability, non-heroic. A full minute on this thing. However, this is a very powerful ability. Norse Force you activate to have each Viking gain from a 420 to 840, so that you can double the strength of the shield, depending upon how many Vikings are alive. It lasts 7 seconds. So if all your Vikings are alive, you get a pretty powerful shield. I'm going to go ahead and pick it up now and show it off. Throw it off there, and it's what, about 30% of some of the Vikings, because it's a flat shield. It doesn't help Olaf as much as it helps Eric. Eric gets a lot of it because it is a flat shield. But it's a lot of shield for 3 different Vikings, because you have to think about it. That's a shield they have to burn through on all 3 Vikings, and if the enemy's not focusing on one of your Vikings, maybe their damage is getting split up amongst your Vikings, this can be very powerful for staying alive. And since on a 60-second cooldown, getting Impatience as a Virtue can be very helpful for getting that up more often. Now, at this level, you also have 2 other options. You can get the 64 KB Marathon, gain an additional 40% movement speed when activating Go, 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 which is your mount ability. It's on a 30-second cooldown, 40% speed increase. You can gain an additional 40% movement speed, and it decays over 4 seconds. Additionally, the Vikings are unstoppable for 1 second, so it means root effects will not affect them. I'll go ahead and show that off. Alright, so I'm in my base, and I've got 64 KB run. We'll go ahead and activate it now. And you can see just how much speed you get there from that burst. The last ability at this level is Large and in Charge. When Olaf charges enemies, they are stunned for 1 second. So that ability I showed you at the very beginning, where you can click on something and he runs in, that will also add a stun to it. So if you're really good at micromanaging the Vikings and getting that getting that charge in to slow them down, that can be quite helpful to you. All right, there's only one more ability to go over at level 20, because we've already gone over the modifiers of Checkpoint and Ragnarok and Roll. The last one at 20 is actually quite nice, and it's a very difficult choice. I think I would prefer this one over Checkpoint Reach, but I would still prefer Ragnarok and Roll for the Longboat. This is the sequel. It increases the Vikings' death timer reduction from 25% to 50%. So they already get a reduced death timer. You can get this and reduce it by half. And you think about it, that's pretty powerful. This is kind of the most recent reincarnation of Resurgence of the Storm. He makes the Vikings kind of one of 2, I believe, heroes that can revive a little bit faster, the other being Diablo. Although it's not as quick as Diablo, but Diablo can sometimes find himself without his ability to reincarnate. The longest timer I do believe in the game right now is 1 minute, which means with the sequel, you're only going to ever be down for 30 seconds at a time. Doesn't seem like you might think, well, that's not great. I mean, it's still 30 seconds, but it means you're going to be up a lot faster, and it's a lot harder for the enemies to knock out your entire team. And it means you'll be able to get out and support any other teammates that are alive at the time. So the sequel can be very powerful indeed for getting yourself back out into the field when you need to. So again, that's why I find it a very difficult choice, because checkpoint reached is nice, but you have to die within the 10 seconds that the stone is up, which can be very difficult. It makes it very awkward to really time around. So I think the sequel would be a better choice for it. I'd like to see them maybe pick up something else for this modifier at some point. Change it up a little bit. So that's pretty much it. I'll go ahead and we're at level 20, so we'll go ahead and show off the death timers for the Vikings. We'll let Eric die first. There he goes. You can see he is now dead. And he apparently came back immediately, so I guess try is not the best place to do it. I thought it would respect the timer, but apparently try mode doesn't. So unfortunately, I can't really show it off. But trust me, that can be quite nice to have your Vikings coming back very quickly. So with that, we're going to go ahead and go through all the poke quotes. This one is going to be a little interesting because each Viking has their own thing that they say independent of whoever I click on, just so you know. So what I'll do is I'll keep clicking one until they start repeating dialogue, then I'll click the other, because each one has his own set of lines that they perform, and then they have their own group thing. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the gameplay videos.
Of course you need me. Eric here. Hello. Of course you need me.
Hey, I think somebody poked me.
I'll poke ya. You're just imagining things.
Oh, no, somebody's definitely poking us. See?
You feel you don't see poking. Ow, knock it off.
He's right. Oh, that's right. I saw that. I told you. Yeah, I hear you. What? Yeah, I hear you. Ugh, hurry up already.
Get lost, will ya?
Done. He's not talking to you Flemfenofgebreg. No.
17 years of nothing, and they bring us back for a MOBA. Ha, figures.
It's not the mower, it's a hero brawler! Hero brawler, Herverhebe, you made that up!
Nope, but Blizzard sure did.
Ugh, you guys are so getting us fired, do you know that? What do you need? Hey, it's Olaf. Olaf! Heidi-ho! I'm gonna poke you in a minute!
Baylog, calm down, breathe. You're gonna blow a gasket! Nice.
You know, if we're going to be lost somewhere, at least this place is nice. Nah, kind of. Now. Ooh, my tummy has never looked so high definition.
Huh, not sure I consider that an upgrade. Whatever happened to Scorch and Fang?
Nobody remembers those guys. I do. Who could forget a dragon and a marmoset? A marma what? A marmoset.
You ever get the feeling of deja vu?
For the 4,649,354th time? No! This guy's not doing nothing. Wake me up when this is over.
No, wait! Ah, he's out. All right, what happens when we have to move? Whew, how are you guys holding up? I think I need a bath.
Bath? Vikings don't need no stinking baths! We don't need no stinking Vikings either!
I'm Eric, too fast, too furious. What's the plan?
Do you think we'll ever see Tomator again?
Tomator? You mean Tommy? It was a little kid named Tommy.
Maybe. He's out there somewhere. Tommy, can you hear me? Feed me! Feed me! Touch me! Just so we're clear, I still have dibs on Eric's helmet. I get his boots!
17 years, nothing changes.
Hey, you guys remember when we were in World of Warcraft?
Ah, that was just a reference.
Yes, Olaf. We're not dwarves. We're Vikings. Except for Eric. He's a dwarf.
You take it back.